Okay, that's quite loud. Welcome everyone. Thank you all for coming. Today we're going to be doing a vinyl listening session. Thank you. Got my tea. Yeah, so this is the first of a monthly series of events we're going to be doing here. I'm Mark. I run a record shop just down the street called Greenhouse Records with my friends Joe. We're a record shop and anarchist bookstore, and we host a radio station called the Pickle Community Radio. So yeah, every month we're going to be coming here, setting up and playing some records with a different theme. We'll probably have some guests on and explore some different topics. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited to have the Pianodrome in Brunsfield. Yeah, I'm going to be playing a lot of, so the theme today is from piano to synthesizer. So I'm going to be speaking about a lot of records where artists kind of played with synthesizers and keyboards and pianos to create new styles of music and to create new sounds that people hadn't made before. And when I was thinking of what to say, and when I was picking out the records, it just struck me, it's like, yeah, you couldn't have a more perfect venue for this. Like, these musicians bent these instruments in certain ways to create these sounds that people hadn't made before, but none of them bent them as far as being able to create an actual physical space where a community could come together and listen to music. And it's such a huge part of the music, isn't it? It's like, I'm going to speak about so many individuals, but none of these records would have happened if it wasn't for the communities that these individuals were a part of, and none of these records would have happened if it wasn't for the point in history that these records were made. There's so many things that surround these musicians that influence the music, and yeah, spaces like this are incredibly important. Spaces like the Pianodrome that are so open, that cater to so many different types of events, allow people to be creative in ways that they wouldn't be able to if these spaces didn't exist. And yeah, I think it's incredibly important that we protect these spaces and keep them in our communities. The Pianodrome has just launched a crowdfunder for this specific venue to help cover not only the running costs, but also just strengthen the project and the building and make it more sustainable. So if you've got any money to give, I think this is a good place to give it. Because yeah, places like this make the world a better place, and we need that right now. No, thank you. Yeah, and it's, yeah, Leon and Tim and so many other people, but it's a huge team effort. This wouldn't have happened without the community, and that's a really special thing. And yeah, what a beautiful space to be. So yeah, if any of you saw the poster I made, you would have seen a very jazzy man on the cover. That man is Sun Ra, who I think a lot of people credit Sun Ra as pushing experimental synthesized keyboard music more than anyone else. Sun Ra formed the Sun Ra Orchestra in the mid-1950s, and the Sun Ra Orchestra, I mean, it still exists to this day. Sun Ra has passed away now, but the community has kept going, and they put out an album last year. But Sun Ra Orchestra was one of the kind of pioneering genres of the Afrofuturism genre. And yeah, their music, well, Sun Ra's whole thing, he was this kind of very eccentric character who claimed that he had come from Saturn to Earth to spread peace to the people. And the orchestra was a group of creatives and musicians who built up this almost science fiction world around that idea. So yeah, it wasn't just musicians, it was dancers, it was artists, it was costume makers, and they created some extremely elaborate creative pieces of music and art that spoke a lot about the struggles that faced the African diaspora living in America. And their music was, yeah, it was unbelievably creative, and a huge part of it was this science fiction side of it, and a lot of that was the sounds that Sun Ra was able to make with these keyboards and synthesizers. He spent a lot of time working to create sounds that sounded like space. So he would use these instruments in ways that people hadn't really been using them before, to try and set the scene for the words he was saying and the stories that he was telling. So the first song I'm going to play is called Somebody Else's World by Sun Ra. So yeah, that is Somebody Else's World by Sun Ra, and yeah, he was an incredibly kind of experimental musician. I think his music, when you listen to it now, doesn't necessarily sound that out there, because we have such a wide array of experimental music and of experimental music that was inspired by Sun Ra. But when this record came out, I'm not actually sure when this one came out, but a lot of his music was coming out in the mid-50s and the early 60s, and that was at a time when jazz music in particular was very simple. It was very like old-timey sounding. Hard bop and bebop were only just starting to emerge, and people weren't really using electronic instruments very much in jazz. Funk was still very far off in the future, and Sun Ra was, yeah, he was creating a sound that was just so foreign and so magical, and yeah, it really captivated a lot of people. And I think a lot of what the Afrofuturism movement was doing was really powerful. They were trying to create these worlds and tell these stories about black people that were reclaiming the histories that had been stolen from them through slavery. And it was an incredibly interesting movement. He played with so many different instruments on these albums. The next one I'm going to play is from a record called Languidity, and he plays 7 different types of electric organ, keyboard, and acoustic pianos on this one record. And the Sun Ra Orchestra has released over 100 studio albums. And yeah, it's almost impossible to listen to the whole discography, but it's a fascinating history. And yeah, something I love about records is the covers and the sleeves and the notes that come with them. I think something that I'm excited to do with these listening sessions is tell the stories behind the records, and I think I've learned a lot of those stories just through the information that comes with the records. So if there's anything that particularly takes your interest, feel free to come and have a look at the cover and read it. And yeah, likewise, if you want to just have a wander about the space while I'm playing this music, or if you want to come down and have a dance at some point, feel free. Just whatever makes you comfortable. But yeah, the next track I'm going to play is from this record, Languidity, and I think you can really start to hear Sun Ra pushing those jazz sounds into something different. This almost sounds like some kind of early hip hop. The way the beat is so different from the jazz music that was being made at the time. And yeah, Sun Ra is someone who inspired a lot of hip hop musicians. A lot of people cite him in his songs, and he's an incredibly sampled artist as well. So yeah, this is Twin Stars of Thence from the Languidity record. I'm not going to play this full record because it's 10 minutes long and I don't have time. But yeah, I think Sun Ra's discography is incredibly interesting to look through because he would go through periods of, he'd release like 6 or 7 albums in a year. So you can really easily kind of like chart his creative progress and the way that different instruments would be introduced and affect his sound. And yeah, I think with Sun Ra and a lot of other black artists in the US at this time, so much of the music was so connected to the politics and the civil rights movement. Not only because they would speak about the politics in the music, but they would actively work with a lot of the people in the civil rights movement. So Horace Tapscott, who was he had a free jazz orchestra that was quite big at the time, worked with Elaine Brown from the Black Panther Party to release various records. And yeah, I think for me, one of my favorite artists who spoke constantly about politics was Nina Simone, who was a classically trained pianist who kind of moved more into being a soul musician. And I'm going to play a song of hers called Young, Gifted and Black. I was going to speak a bit more about it, but to be honest, I think the lyrics are so beautiful and they kind of tell the story better than I ever could.
Young, gifted and black. Oh, what a lovely, precious dream. A million boys and girls who are young, gifted and black, and that's a fact. You are young, gifted and black. We must begin to tell our young. Yours is the quest that's just begun. When you're feeling real low, yeah, there's a great truth that you should know. When you're young, gifted and black, your soul's intact. To be young, gifted and black. Oh, how I've longed to know the truth. There are times when I look back and I am haunted by my youth. But my joy of today is that we can all be proud to say, to be young, gifted and black is where it's at, is where it's at, is where it's at.
Yeah, an incredibly beautiful message of, like, I guess just hope and positivity there. And Nina Simone was someone who throughout her whole career was very outspoken about civil rights. And yeah, I think an extremely interesting person, not just politically, but also musically. Yeah, so for the first few records, I've kind of focused on American music, but I think for me, when I think of keyboards and synthesizers and organs, my mind probably goes to North Africa. Like, I have a lot of records from Egypt and Ethiopia that tend to be very organ heavy, and it's such a beautiful, dreamy sound that I haven't really found elsewhere. I was lucky enough actually to see Hailu Merija play in what's it called, the Assembly Rooms, I think, last year. Who's probably one of my favorite Ethiopian musicians. This album that I'm going to play came out at a time where there was quite intense military rule in Ethiopia, and they were cracking down a lot on various forms of creative culture, but particularly in the music industry. But there was a huge underground scene in Ethiopia at the time, and there was a lot of parties happening outside of licensed venues all through the night, and Haile Merja kind of came out of that scene. And he's probably one of the Ethiopian artists who's kind of broken out onto the world scene the most. This is one of his most famous songs, but yeah, I just find it so beautiful. So this is Haile Merja playing the organ. this is very beautiful. So that was a that was a song from Haile Merja from Ethiopia. I'm bringing things back to the UK. The next song I'm going to play is a cover of an Ethiopian artist called Emahoy by the group The Vernon Spring. Emahoy was a nun in Ethiopia who you may know her from, she released a lot of music with the Ethiopiques compilations. But yeah, really beautiful synthy music like that, but almost with like much more classical compositions. And I think this cover by the Vernon Spring is a stripped back piano version. So I kind of knew her music as being very synth heavy before. But hearing it played just in the piano, I think it kind of brings out just how beautiful her composing is and her songwriting is. And this is one of those songs that it's like the first time I heard it, it just hit me. And it's one of those songs that feels like it has always existed. Like the notes just make so much sense, and I find it so beautiful. This is probably my favorite stripped back, just piano song. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. So that was the song Fairfield from Glasgow-based pianist Fergus McCready's new album, The Shieling. Fergus is quite like a classically trained jazz pianist, and most of his music is very structured, and he spends a lot of time on the compositions. But for this, he kind of wanted to break out of that style. So I think it's 4 of them in the band, maybe 3 of them, took a trip up to Skye with no plans, and I think they spent a week in a cottage and came up with this album. And I think a lot of what he tries to do through his music is paint a picture of the Scottish landscape and kind of make a bit of a modern reinterpretation of Scottish music. And it's really interesting seeing these younger musicians create these fusions with Scottish traditional music and really keep the culture alive. I think what him and Matt Carmichael and Breacher Campbell and people like that are doing is super fascinating. But yeah, when I was trying to think of local examples, or at least UK-based examples of piano music and keyboard music and synthesized music, I couldn't not play a techno record. It doesn't necessarily fit with everything else, but it's such a huge part of our culture here. I think especially in the 90s, the rave scene in the UK was huge, and it really influenced dance music across the world, the way people were using synthesizers here, especially in the north of England. And yeah, the underground rave movement was really huge and really active. There's this really interesting crossover between the kind of free festival movement, that it was all over the UK, but it was very strong down near Glastonbury. And then when Acid House came over from the US and Ecstasy arrived in the UK, that kind of the melting pot of those 3 created a really fruitful music scene, and so much music came out of that. And it's music that I grew up around. My dad is a huge techno fan and would play it a lot, and this was one of the first records he bought me, actually. So this record came out, I think 4 or 5 years after the government put through the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, which criminalized free parties much more heavily than they were before. So that's why the rave scene isn't as strong here anymore, but the legacy of that culture lives on through the music. So this is a track called Jumbo by Underworld.
Bro, there's a little sale on vests at Walmart. $9.
Oh yeah?
8 something, yeah. Nice little vest, light.
That was the first track from Mark Garson's Mother Earth's Plantasia. Before we heard a cover of Claire de Lune by the Japanese composer Tamika. And both records are made using the Moog synthesizer, which has a very particular sound. It's that, I don't know, I feel like the sound almost has a very specific texture to it that I really like a very psychedelic, spacey sound. And yeah, the Plantasia record is really funny. Each song on the record, the music, the whole idea is that the music is made for plants, and each song on the record is a song for a different plant. And it was a very, very hard record to get up until, I think 2015 was the first time it was actually released to the public. Originally, when the music came out, it was just a promotional album that you would get for free if you bought a houseplant from a particular, I can't remember what it's called, from a shop called Mother Earth in LA, and then it became this like underground cult classic record. I think you could probably stream it online, but yeah, we've only had the record kind of in the public realm for the past 10 years, which seems crazy, because it's such a beautiful album. The next song I'm going to play has those similar psychedelic spacey sounds, but it's made using an electric keyboard. And it's a record from Pakistan where these sounds appear a lot in the music, specifically the music from the cinema industry. So the Pakistan cinema industry isn't as big anymore, but back in its heyday, it was called Lollywood. It was based in Lahore. That's where it got its name. But yeah, the cinema industry was the fourth biggest cinema producer in the world, and it was by far the most progressive at the time. Most of the lead actors were female, and they approached a lot of topics in the films that you just wouldn't get in the States or in France or anywhere else in the world. And it was this really fun balance of like really progressive films but super creative films, and this was really tightly tied to the music that was in the films. So the music in Pakistan at the time, like soundtracks, were the biggest songs. And yeah, as they often do, the US didn't like this because it was way too progressive, so they decided to back a military coup, which, yeah, completely, they installed an Islamic State and completely crushed the creative sector and destroyed a lot of the music. But yeah, I don't know. I think one kernel of hope you can get from something as horrible and as sad as that is that you can't completely extinguish these things. These records were so spread out between the people that lived in Pakistan that, of course, they've lived on, and we still have this music to listen to now, which is a beautiful thing because it kind of calls back to a period in Pakistan's history that was just like incredibly rich and beautiful. And for me, this is by far the most interesting album of that time. I mean, albums are particularly rare from Pakistan because most cinema vinyls were just released as 7-inch singles, so there are very few actual 12-inch albums. But this one in particular it traces a fictional train journey through Pakistan. There's a lot of information on there's a nice map on the back, but basically it's almost like a study of the different musical styles in Pakistan. So throughout the record, it has these train sounds and it feels like you're on this train journey, but as the record progresses, the music changes with the musical styles of the different region. And it's a super interesting record because actually the regions in Pakistan have very, very different music styles. But I guess because it's all the same composer and the same musicians, they somehow fit together in this journey. But there's so many different sounds in there. There are a lot of songs that are very stripped back and folky, and then there's some with like heavy electric guitar and distortion pedals. And yeah, it's a very, very interesting record to listen to. It was hard to pick which song to play because none of them really represent the whole album because the whole album is so varied. So I'd really recommend out of any of these to go home and listen to this one in full. It's called Khyber Mail by Sohail Rana. Yeah, I'm going to play the first track off it, which is called Khyber Mail. But yeah, a very, very interesting record. So that was Khyber Mail by Sohail Rana. And yeah, when I was reading about the record and thinking about music and cultures that people have tried to extinguish, it made me think of this record I have called The Intifada, 1987, which is a record that was recorded during the first Intifada in Palestine in 1987 by a Palestinian musician called Riyad Awad. Riyad Awad was quite a popular, I guess he made almost like disco music, but during the Intifada he was displaced from his home and was separated from all his band, but he wanted to make music to speak about his experience and to send a message out to his people and his fans and his followers. So him, along with his family, who he was staying with at the time, recorded this record where they were staying, and the songs have different messages to his fellow Palestinians, and yeah, it's a really, really beautiful record, and I think it's a really beautiful thing that in such a horrible, traumatic moment, he chose to make music, and he chose to try and connect with his people, and to put this out there, and yeah, he made this record, and he printed, he was able to print 3,000 cassettes, and distributed them around where he was, and the IDF thought they had seized all of them. They found out about this record and weren't happy, so it went around taking them all. And they had all 3,000, and up until lockdown, actually, they thought this record was lost, until the guy that runs this Palestinian sound archive came across a bunch of tapes and found a copy that someone had made of the original cassette. So I think in 2022, this record was released again and is now back out in the world. And yeah, what a special thing for this being so close to extinction and for us to still be able to listen to it and to hear these messages. And yeah, what a horrible thing that Palestinians are still having to go through this. But I think if there's anything to learn from this, it's that music is a powerful tool that we can use to connect with people and to communicate messages. And yeah, yeah, we need to use it for that. We need to use it to build a better world. So this is a track called I'm From Jerusalem from the Intifada.
أنا القدسي من البلدة القديمة، أنا من شوارع فلسطين الحبيبة. أنا القدسي من البلدة القديمة، أنا من شوارع فلسطين الحبيبة. أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي من البلدة القديمة، أنا من شوارع فلسطين الحبيبة. أنا من القدسي من البلدة القديمة، أنا من شوارع فلسطين الحبيبة. أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي. في الشوارع، في المزارع، في المصانع، في الطرقات. في الشوارع، في المزارع، في المصانع، في الطرقات. سأبقى أناضل 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 لتحرير الأرض والإنسان. سأبقى أناضل 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 لتحرير الأرض والإنسان. أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي بالبلدة القديمة، أنا من شوارع فلسطين الحبيبة. أنا من القدسي بالبلدة القديمة، أنا من شوارع فلسطين الحبيبة. أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي. في الشوارع، في المزارع، في المصانع، في الطرقات. في الشوارع، في المزارع، في المصانع، في الطرقات. سأبقى أناضل 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 لتحرير الأرض والإنسان. سأبقى أناضل 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 لتحرير الأرض والإنسان. أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي بالبلدة القديمة، أنا من شوارع فلسطين الحبيبة. أنا من القدسي بالبلدة القديمة، أنا من شوارع فلسطين الحبيبة. أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي. في الشوارع، في المزارع، في المصانع، في الطرقات. في الشوارع، في المزارع، في المصانع، في الطرقات. أبواب المساجد، مداخل الكنائس، طلبوا العدل والسلام. أبواب المساجد، مداخل الكنائس، طلبوا العدل والسلام. أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي القدسي في البلدة القديمة، أنا من شوارع فلسطين الحبيبة، أنا من القدسي في البلدة القديمة، أنا من شوارع فلسطين الحبيبة، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا من القدسي، أنا.
Okay. I think I've gone over time a bit, so that seems like as good a song to end on as any. Yeah, I want to thank you all for coming. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. It means a lot that people want to come and see me chat shit about records. But yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much to the Pianodrome for having me. Yeah, I'll be back every month doing a different thing. We haven't decided what the next month is going to be, but we're going to figure that out, and yeah, you'll find it on Instagram and the Pianodrome.
Did we not think the first Saturday of...
Yeah, so it'll be the first Saturday of December. We don't know the topic, but yeah, you'll find out about it. And yeah, come buy a record from our shop because it's hard to pay rent and we've got good music. So yeah, thank you. I'll play this Thelonious Monk record, but feel free to gradually leave.